Whether the team is performing clean or unsightly, we'll cover it all here on Washington Football Nightly Live. I, of course, am your set man, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. Let's get to tonight's lead story. So, after combing through all of the film, and I'll be putting the finishing touches on week number 3's film, I looked at the defense today, and much like the offense, it's crazy. I guess it makes a ton of sense when you sit and actually think about it. The first and third quarters for the defense were extraordinary. They were lights out. Even with the injuries to Ioannidis and Young, this defense played at a very high level in the third quarter. They were outstanding. And the Browns really did not move the football much at all in the third quarter and the first quarter either. It really was the turnovers that really jump-started their offense. But at the end of the third quarter, that drive after Washington took the lead for the first time in the second half, 20-17, that drive, the defense let them down. And I break that down on the film, and you'll see why. And there are some things that are a little troubling, some things that they need to clean up defensively from the game. But all in all, much like the offense, it was good for 2 quarters. It was bad for 2 quarters. And to this point of the season, we haven't played a complete game yet. We're still waiting for 4 quarters of consistent, good quality football. We haven't had that yet. Even in the win over Philadelphia, we were not good the first half of that game. If not for Fabian Moreau's interception, we don't score in the first half, and we're shut out 17-0, and we're searching for answers at halftime. So now the game totally changed in the second half, and we dominated. But that was 2 quarters of quality football from Washington. In Arizona, I felt like we dominated parts of the game. I never felt like we dominated a quarter against the Arizona Cardinals. There were quarters where, in stretches where we kind of got our footing underneath us and we played better. But there was never a definitive quarter where you could say, hey, we dominated that quarter against the Arizona Cardinals. Maybe the third quarter is the one quarter you could say, hey, we were the better team in that particular quarter, but not much else went right for us against Arizona for a full 15 minutes. And so, obviously, against the Browns, I thought we were exceptional in the first quarter. We talked about getting off to a faster start. Well, we did that in this game. I mean, obviously, it didn't show up on the scoreboard the way you would like. I mean, I would have loved a 14-3 start to the game. And had Dwayne not thrown that first interception, maybe we were on our way to that because we were moving the football. They hadn't stopped us, really. The opening drive of the game, that was the one possession that they stopped us, and I felt like we kind of stopped ourselves. And then the second possession, that's the one we took down the field and scored a touchdown on. And we were well on our way to scoring again on that third possession, and that's when Dwayne threw the interception, and that's when things kind of fell apart. But I thought we were really good in the first quarter defensively, and I thought we were exceptional. The best, that third quarter against the Browns might have been the best quarter of defense that we've seen from this football team. Not sacking the quarterback. I mean, honestly, to do it without Matt Ioannidis and Chase Young is amazing, but it also speaks to just how good Montez Sweat was. He was dominant in this game. You know, Montez Sweat's second half, the back end of the first half into the second half, he was unblockable at times. He was magnificent. I was so proud of him in this game because we're waiting for Montez Sweat to take the next step, and I feel like he's on the cusp of doing it right now. I think he's growing before our very eyes, and I think we may have another elite pass rusher / defensive end. Let's not slash it. He's not just a pass rusher because he's playing the run as well. I think we may have another elite defender on our hands, and this may be another well-spent first-round pick. When you look at Young and Sweat, I think we could have the cornerstones of what could be an elite defense if we're able to put together more parts. There's still upgrades that need to be made in this defense. You can't make them all overnight, okay? But that defensive line, to me, is where it needs to be. I think the next upgrade needs to take place. I think you can get by in the secondary. I think we've got enough patchwork guys and quality defenders in the secondary that we can get by. And I'd love to upgrade safety, and maybe that's something they look to do in the offseason, right? But I think the linebacker position is the next position that could use a major piece. I don't think you need to overhaul linebacker, but maybe if Reuben Foster is a guy that they're able to re-sign on a 1-year prove-it deal next year because he'll be a free agent and he gets back to being the Reuben Foster of old, I don't know. Maybe he's the guy. Maybe he's the answer. We're missing elite, game-changing speed and difference-making ability at the linebacker position right now. We've got quality linebackers. I like Kevin Pierre-Louis. I see what they saw in him, but he's not elite. He's not a difference maker. He's just a quality linebacker. I like him. I've always liked John Bostic. I don't love him, and I've always felt that way. John Bostic, when we got him last year, I said, hey, he's a quality football player. I like him. I don't love him, okay? So I think there are some things that we can improve on this defense, but when I look at this group as a whole, even with the injuries, we did some really good things. And we still have some guys that can make a difference. And watching the film, Kendall Fuller looks good. Now, a lot of his snaps came against tight ends and running backs and things of that nature. So I want to see him be tested a lot more often than he was last week. And he's going to get that this week versus the Ravens. They're going to throw a bunch of different receivers at him. He's going to get some matchups versus some tight ends because they're very flexible out there with their tight ends. They move those guys around, and he's going to get some snaps against, Andrews and things of that nature. But for the most part, I thought the secondary was really good. They were really solid in this game. We played a ton of zone, not a lot of man this week. We tried some man last week, didn't really have success. They didn't do a lot of man coverage in this game, a lot of zone. But all in all, 2 bad quarters, 2 really good quarters, not good enough with the turnovers. Again, I walked away more impressed with the outcome in terms of after watching it, sitting and watching. I walked away more impressed than I thought I was going to. This is a team that I told you this game was going to, whether win or lose, this game was going to tell me how competitive we were going to be this season. I saw all I needed to see. We're going to be a competitive team this season because we got down at halftime 17-7. These guys didn't quit. Made the adjustments at halftime. I showed you one of the adjustments defensively on the film, and you'll see that a little bit later on. After this live stream wraps up, I'll be able to put the finishing touches on the second half film, upload that to Patreon, so you'll get a chance to look at some of the adjustments made in the second half. But this group, and we've talked about this over the years, about the lack of adjustments at halftime and the lack of adjustments in game. You see it with this group. You see the adjustments. You see guys recognizing some of the things that plagued them in the first half or on a drive earlier in the game, and they make the adjustments necessary. And you saw that in this game at times. It's pretty encouraging. I'll say that. Against the mid-level to bottom tier teams in this league, we're going to have a shot to win. I don't think we're ready for the upper echelon teams. These next 2 weeks, I think, is going to be pretty rough for the good old Washington football team. Now, there are some things that I'm really excited about, including Dwayne. At times, you look at Dwayne and you say, man, we got something here. But there are other times where you say, okay, yeah, we got to be better. We got to be much, much better. I'm encouraged. I remain encouraged, and I can't wait till Sunday. I can't wait to watch this team, even though I know the outcome of this one, unlike the first 3 weeks of the season, or really the last 2 weeks. I knew what the outcome was going to be in week 1. I had guaranteed a victory. I knew we were going to win that game. I didn't know the last 2 weeks, but I was excited to see. I'm excited to see the fellas on the field, but I kind of already know how this one's going to end. I just want to see how everything looks in the middle. I think the Ravens might get off to a fast start, and they may coast at the end. I want to see what happens in the middle to allow them to get out to that big lead and allows them to coast at the end. And I want to see how these guys handle more adversity, because you're going to get a little bit more adversity. It was good to know there wasn't any finger pointing. No one was blaming Dwayne. They're sticking together as a unit. They believe in Dwayne. That's a good thing to see and to hear from these players, that they believe in Dwayne, because it doesn't matter what we think. All right, it doesn't matter what all of you out there are saying, oh, this, that, and the third about Dwayne. We need to lose and tank, do this, do that. It doesn't matter any of that. As long as the guys in that locker room believe in Dwayne Haskins, that is all that matters. And it sounds like he still got the confidence of the guys in that locker room. But confidence is fleeting, okay? You know, a couple more of those performances and the defense feels like they've played good enough and the guys around him offensively feel like they've done their job good enough to come out with the W, and the one position holding them back is quarterback. That's when you start to have to wonder if change is coming. And Dwayne, I don't think this is who he is. We didn't see many of these types of performances last year. Okay, he's not a guy that turns the football over very often. I throw out the Giants and Vikings game last year. He wasn't prepared, and he told us he wasn't prepared. Like, hey, I wasn't doing enough to be ready if my number was called. I wasn't expecting to play, and I didn't prepare like a guy that was going into the game. I read you his little manifesto at the end of the season, that self-reflection piece that he did for Redskins.com. I read that to you guys. So he's a different guy. And I think that the latter portion of the season, even when it wasn't the cleanest, the Jets game, the Packers game, the Panthers game, the Lions game, the Giants and the Eagles to wrap up, he didn't turn it over a bunch in those games, okay? It's not like this guy's a turnover machine. That's not what he did at Ohio State. And I get it. It's Ohio State. All right? And the competition is – there's a big discrepancy between the competition week in and week out at Ohio State. I get that. I'm very cognizant of that. However, he didn't turn it over much at Ohio State. He didn't turn it over once he got settled in and was named the starter last year against Buffalo and all the games that he played in last year. He didn't turn it over a bunch. So I don't think this is who he is. I don't think he's a turnover machine. I think he's a guy that wants to make plays, and I think he just got out of hand. It got out of hand. He tried to do too much. We'll see. But I was encouraged by the defense, even though we're going to be missing some key components in the upcoming week. And moving forward after that, we're going to be missing some key cogs defensively as we're not getting Ioannidis back. Speaking of key cogs and guys getting back, let's get to in other news. And we heard from Jack Del Rio today, as we usually do on Wednesdays. We heard from Dwayne Haskins today, as we usually do on Wednesdays. The one guy that was omitted today was head coach Ron Rivera, and there's a reason as to why, because he was getting treatment for his cancer today, so he was not at the team facility nor at practice. So we heard from Jack Del Rio. We heard from Dwayne Haskins. Both had some interesting things to say. We'll talk about what was said from both of those guys, but I first want to give you an update on Chase Young's groin. So apparently Chase Young had an MRI. The results of that MRI, and this is all hearsay and speculation. Nothing has been confirmed by the team. Nothing has been confirmed by Ron Rivera. We don't know any of this to be a fact. We're getting this all off of people that are trying to give us information that they're hearing from people close to the situation, but none of this has been substantiated yet. So don't run with any of this. But per Ian Rappaport via Twitter, he says that it's a very moderate groin sprain that he sustained and that he's week to week, but more likely than not, he's out for the Ravens game. I had already counted him out of this game. Okay. I don't think he's going to play next week, to be honest with you. I think they're going to take it nice and slow with Chase Young. They're not looking to risk this guy's long-term future or even his ability to help us this season by trying to rush him back. We saw how gingerly he was walking around off the field. We saw how slowly they took him when they took the situation when he had the hip flexor in camp. I think you're going to see a lot more of that, and I think it could be 2, maybe even 3 weeks before we see Chase Young on the football field again, donning the burgundy and gold, trying to help this team win. And that's disappointing because he's so much fun to watch. And you lose that element of the defense without Chase Young being in the lineup. But that's great news. That's as good of a report, if true, that we could have possibly gotten from that situation. No structural damage. This is not a long-term injury, not something that, will rear its ugly head if given the proper amount of time. this should be something that we can put in the rear view mirror and he can come back from and play good ball for us. So hopefully he's able to heal up faster, sooner rather than later, and we'll get him back on the field. But that's a good report if it is, in fact, true. So with that being said, you look at what Jack Del Rio had to say. And, Jack pretty much talked about the defense from week 3, talked about some of the improvements that they can make. And he won't get into specifics, which is a good thing. You don't want to get into specifics. You don't want to give away anything. And so Jack essentially talked about things that they could do better. He talked about Montez Sweat and how dominant he was and the growth that they've seen from Montez as a defender, how he's getting used to putting his hand in the dirt again, and how they really think that this guy's coming of age right before their very eyes. He talked about his favorite player to talk about, and they seemed to ask him about him because he was so complimentary of him in the offseason. Of course, Kevin Pierre-Louis, they ask him about him just about every week. And Jack talked about the play down by the goal line in particular. I broke that down on film. That was not a play that if I'm Kevin Pierre-Louis that I'm happy about. And Jack pretty much said the same thing. Like, you got to attack in that situation. I talked about that on the film. You got to attack in that situation. You can't stand back on your heels there. So he said he did some good things, as most of the players on the field did at some point throughout the course of the game. But, that's one of those plays you would like to have back there if you're Kevin Pierre-Louis. And then he also talked about defending Lamar Jackson. Obviously, that's going to be a big topic this week. We know about how things went in week 2 versus Kyler Murray. This is a similar athlete, probably an even better one here in Lamar Jackson. They're coming off of a rough outing on Monday night, short turnaround for them. He said that the whole tentative thing, I don't think he even really likes the fact that Ron even brought that up, because now he keeps getting questions about this whole tentative defensive performance versus Arizona, and I don't think Jack really subscribes to that. But and I remember him telling the media, I'm not going to bring up personal conversations between me and head coach Ron Rivera. So I could tell he wasn't too thrilled with Ron sharing that bit of information about playing tentative. But Ron's told us from the jump, I'm a straightforward guy. I'm a straight shooter. I shoot from the hip. I'm going to tell you exactly how I feel, and I'm not going to really hold any punches. So Jack pretty much said, look, don't think we were really tentative as much as we just weren't as aggressive when rushing up the field. We wanted to be a little bit more disciplined in our approach so that we didn't give Kyler Murray any gaping holes to run up. But in doing so, we still allowed him to get out of there because we weren't aggressive enough. So there's this fine line that you walk, this happy medium that you need to have when you're playing against these types of quarterbacks. I thought the Chiefs did a magnificent job of keeping Lamar Jackson in the pocket. They seem to always have a guy on both edges to force him back inside and frustrate him because he wants to get outside. He wants to create. He wants to use his legs. And I thought they did a really good job of holding him down on Monday night. And they're hoping that they can have some of that type of success against Lamar on Sunday. But he wouldn't get into specifics, nor should he, as this is going to be another tough opponent for Washington in week number 4. You got to Dwayne, and I think this was a big presser for him because a lot of people wanted to hear him not only be contrite, but also be a little bit more self-reflective. Admit that you stared down receivers. Admit that you didn't play well. Admit that you have to play better. You knew they were going to come at him with all of the quotables from Ron on Monday because there were a bunch of them. About Ron talking about how, this team, it's not fair to the team when you don't play well, and there are guys in there that deserve better and things of that nature. And so, hey, you're not going to be a rookie forever. You can't regress. All of those things that Ron threw out there on Monday, you knew they were going to throw it back in Dwayne's face, and I wanted to see how he handled all of that. And I thought he handled all of that extremely well. Before we get to that, I don't want to lose any of these super chats. So I'm going to go ahead and read these real quick, and we'll go to our social media maneuvers real quick, get to some of these super chats so I don't lose any of them, and then we'll come back to Dwayne and what he had to say at his presser. So Door Gunner, thank you for the super chat. Door Gunner, greatly appreciate you as always. Door Gunner writes, guys are getting open. Dwayne needs to hit them. We left a bunch of points on the field last week. Terry was wide open in the end zone. Absolutely. And the film breakdown shows that. Absolutely. Guys were open. And again, we don't know the progressions and the reads that Dwayne is supposed to be going through. I didn't sleep at a Holiday Inn last night, nor do I pretend that I'm the smartest guy in the room, but I know when I see open, I know when I see open, okay? You know when you see open. And if this guy isn't open, don't stand there and stare at him. Move on to the next progression and get to the guy that is open. And when he is open, hit him. Don't miss him. So I felt like I don't necessarily think we left a bunch of points on the board as much as I felt like we left a lot of opportunities. We left a lot of yards that could have led to points potentially on the scoreboard. So that's how I feel about that. We left a lot of opportunities for chunk plays. We left a lot of opportunities for stick moving plays that prolong drives and allow you to have an opportunity to potentially get into the end zone. I think we did miss some of those opportunities. Absolutely. And the turnovers killed some drives that were promising as well. You know, 2 of those drives that ended, we were moving the football. You know, only one of those interceptions was one that we weren't on the move. You know, that one right before halftime to Malcolm Smith was the lone interception where we weren't moving when the interception took place. Or actually, I take that back. The fumble, we were on the move. And the first interception, we were on the move. I think the second and third one, we weren't as far down the field. But that's nor here nor there. Bottom line is, as Ron Rivera said, he's got to be better. End of discussion. Really isn't much more to say. And Dwayne pretty much echoed those sentiments today. Thank you for the super chat, Door Gunner. Got a super chat here from my man, Derek B. Thank you for the super chat, Derek B. As always, greatly appreciate you. Derek writes, D has to be better, but fans have Ashburn syndrome with the weapons. Besides Terry, who is the receiver or running back to ever have 100 yards a game? He said the only guy they've ever had there and done that plays for the Lions. So he's talking about Adrian Peterson, by the way. And, you know, I wasn't the biggest, oh, man, we made such a big mistake cutting AD loose. I wasn't that guy. I was like, hey, they made the decision. They feel like he's not a great fit for what they want to do. They're moving on. And I actually like our running backs, to be truthfully honest with you guys. To be brutally honest, I actually like the backs that we have. I think they fit this offense to a T, and I think they need more opportunities to show what it is they can bring to the table. That being said, I've watched every Detroit Lions game this season. He looks really damn good. All right, he's not the AD of old. We already know that, but he's running the football really effectively. Again, for what we're doing, I don't think he would fit necessarily. That's not what he's strong at. He's better when you line him up in the backfield, whether you put a fullback in front of him or you go single back. It's really of no consequence. I think he's just better when you're under center. He's not a great gun run running back. We saw that kind of last year. However, he looks good. I'm just going to tell you, AD looks good, and he can still play at a high level. And we already knew that. But I think what the fans are looking at in terms of weaponry around Dwayne is that we're young and that they feel like, hey, look, we may not have any dominant guys at receiver, tight end, or running back, but collectively as a group, after Terry, there's enough stuff there to get the job done. And I actually believe that after watching Isaiah Wright, and I think Antonio Gandy Golden is going to be better. He needs more snaps. He's going to start catching the ball more effectively. I think he's going to be fine before it's all said and done. So I'm not worried about him. And I like the fact that these guys are getting more reps. That's the only way they're going to get better, is they have to play. But I think when you start looking at Steven Sims, you look at Isaiah Wright, you look at J.D. McKissick, you look at Antonio Gibson, and you sprinkle in Logan Thomas, I think collectively as a group, and Dontrell Inman, don't let me forget him because he's been massive for us early in this season. When you sprinkle in, when you put all of that together, that's enough to get it done. All right, it's not going to be dominant. You're not going to take coverage away from Terry with that. You're going to need to do that. You're going to have to fix that in the offseason. Okay, but what you do have are enough guys that you can spread the wealth around and take some of the pressure off of Terry. So, and Terry's doing his damn thing, whether they're putting their number one on him or they're trying to double him. Terry's still eating pretty damn well early in this season. So I understand where you're coming from, but at the same time, I think there's enough stuff out here, and I've showed you this on the film. Scott Turner is doing a magnificent job of scheming it up and getting guys open, and they've just got to do a better job of getting these guys the football. He's doing a magnificent job of scheming it up. It's Scott Turner. All right, I've been impressed with his play calling. He's run it well, all right, and ran it in some really good situations. He did a good job this week of getting Dwayne off to a fast start, short completions, easy completions, so that we could get the offense going a lot sooner. He didn't wait till we were in 3rd and 8 to throw the first pass of the game. I thought he did some really good things again in week number 3. I've been really impressed with Scott Turner's play calling. I really have. Guys are open. These are some really good concepts that they're running. Now you just got to get them the football. Simple as that. So I think we're fine, Derek B. I think we're fine with what we have for the time being. Yeah, we could use an upgrade. I'm not saying we can't, but got another super chat. This one is from Barrett Downing. Thank you for the super chat, BD. As always, greatly appreciate you. My man Barrett writes, with Young out, who steps up? Kerrigan can't play all snaps. Maybe Orchard can be that disruptive force. I think they're going to split these reps up between Orchard and probably James Smith-Williams. I think both of those guys are up this week versus the Ravens. And, you know, they're going to need as many bodies along the defensive line as possible because they're going to try to keep guys fresh. When you're containing a guy like Lamar Jackson and his ability to run, he's so fast. Guys are going to be winded trying to keep up with him. I think they're going to be looking to sub these defensive ends in and out and keep guys fresh, these defensive tackles as well. So it wouldn't shock me if they spent a bunch of the active roster spots on defense this week, primarily along the defensive line, trying to keep these guys fresh and healthy this week against a very active Ravens offense. So I think you're going to see a lot of Orchard. And remember, also Ryan Anderson got nicked in the game as well. We're going to get our first injury report tomorrow where we really start to figure out what's going on with Dontrell Inman, what's going on with Chase Young, and what's going on with Ryan Anderson, not to mention the guys that went into the game banged up, like Morgan Moses, who wasn't at practice today, and Steven Sims. We need to know how those guys are feeling after a full game of work. Are these guys progressing well and trending towards playing in week number 4? So there's, again, that laundry list of injuries is getting longer and longer. It was very short in week 1, hella short in week 2. Now we're getting back to what we have been accustomed to over the years with a bunch of guys being nicked up. And now we just got to try to find a way to circumvent and navigate through all of these injuries and be competitive. So we'll find out a lot more about some of these injuries. But if Ryan Anderson isn't able to go, I don't think Chase Young is going to go this week. You're probably going to see a lot more of James Smith-Williams and Nate Orchard up on the active roster this week, getting some real snaps. As you mentioned, Kerrigan cannot carry the load by himself at this point. They're going to want to sub in guys. You're going to see Kerrigan more likely than not starting opposite Sweat, however, and you're going to see Kerrigan in a lot more like you did on Sunday in the upcoming weeks, potentially without Chase Young. Thank you for that super chat, Barrett Downing. Got another one here. This one is from Rob Yu. Thank you for the super chat, Rob Yu. Greatly appreciate you, Rob Yu, as always, who writes, what up, Lou? I know it's early, but do you think Jonathan Allen gets paid in the offseason, and does Tim Settle play well enough to become a nice trade asset? As far as Jonathan Allen is concerned, it just depends on how much that it's going to take to pay him, you know, what the market is for him. Like, there's a price that you put on certain guys. I think one of the things that we can't put a price tag on is his leadership in the locker room. I think he's a guy that they view as a true leader on this team. He's no nonsense. He's a guy with tremendous work ethic, a guy that some of the younger players look towards for guidance and leadership, even if it's nonverbal leadership. He's a guy that I think they want him to be a fixture on this team. That being said, talent-wise, I don't know if they put a price tag on keeping Jonathan Allen or not. Like last year, for instance, they put a price tag on certain guys, and I respect that. They put a price tag on Eric Flowers last year, and as soon as the Dolphins went over the amount that they were looking to pay him, they said, hey, Eric, man, it's been real, bro. Good luck, man. We really appreciate all you did here, man. Have a good one. Take care, man. We wish you nothing but the best. You know, they put a price tag on Austin Hooper. They said, oh, Austin, oh, 10 mil? Oh, go ahead and do your thing, brother. Go ahead and do your thing, Wody. Hey, we were interested, but not for that price. You go ahead and sign with Cleveland, man. Good luck with that. So they put a price tag on guys last year. So I don't know if they do that with Jonathan Allen. He's one of their own. He's a leader in the locker room. And I think when this season's done, you're going to look up and he's going to end up with 9.5, 10 sacks. He's already got like 2.5 sacks on the season, or at least 2. I think in week 1, he had a sack and a half. He had another sack in Cleveland this past weekend. I think he's up to about 2.5 sacks on the season. So Allen is one of those guys that statistically you're going to look up. He's just solid across the board. Nothing jumps out at you about Jonathan Allen. He's just really solid across the board. And if he's willing to take solid across the board money, I think he's back here in Washington. If he's looking for top of the market defensive tackle money, that's when you've got to say, hey, go ahead and see what's out there, man. Test the market. And if you get a massive deal, hey, man, it's been real. Hey, we love you around here, man, and we always will. This will always be home for you. But you go ahead and get your bread, man. It just won't be here. So it's going to be interesting. I think, and as you said, it's early. It's too early to really be able to tell. But I think Sheriff is a guy that I'm leaning towards him not being here next year. With all the injuries and him not being able to stay healthy these past 3 years, with the amount of money a guy like Brandon Sheriff commands on the free agent market, I think they let him walk. I think Allen is more likely to be a guy that they keep, and Sheriff is a guy that they say we can draft another one of those. May not be as dominant as Sheriff, but even Sheriff gets beat. You know, when we break down the film, Sheriff gets beat from time to time. So it's not like he's this lights out interior offensive lineman that never gets beat, that's always available, that's a road grader in the run game. He's a good football player. I don't think he's worth elite money at this point. So there's some interesting decisions to be made by this team in the offseason. But remember, Jonathan Allen is in year 4 of a 5-year deal. They picked up the 5th-year option, so they don't have to do anything this offseason. You'd like to do something this offseason, but he's got another year after this year on his contract. So they don't have to reach a deal with Jonathan Allen this offseason. They've got to reach one with him next offseason, but you want to do that this offseason so that he doesn't get to free agency the following year. Thank you for that super chat, Rob. Got one here from Kevin, the PRF. Thank you for the super chat, Kev. My man Kevin writes, just curious on your take of recently called up player Nate Orchard. I was at the Panthers game last year and he balled out in that game. I've always liked Nate Orchard coming out of Utah. He's one of those guys that is a really solid player, but when you play in the Pac-12 and you put up big gaudy numbers, people always question if they don't see the twitchiness, and that's the problem with Nate Orchard, is he's not twitchy. He's just a quality pass rusher. That's part of the reason the Cowboys ended up getting a steal in the 5th round this year by a lot of people's standards in defensive end Bradley Anai. Not twitchy, okay, but a guy that just knows how to get to the quarterback. Same thing happened with Iowa pass rusher this year that was drafted by the Bills. I can't think of his name, but he fell all the way to the 2nd round. AJ Epineza fell to the 2nd round. Not flashy, not explosive and dynamic. And when you don't have those traits, people seem to sleep on you. And Nate Orchard is one of those guys that he's not twitchy. He's not dynamic in any shape, way, or form. However, he's a solid football player. And, you know, he uses his hands well. Not great, but he uses his hands well. He understands leverage. I think he's a solid football player, and I think he's going to fill in a backup capacity. Well, don't expect big things from Nate Orchard, okay? Don't do that. But if you put him in front of an inferior tackle, he can have an impact. But if you put him in front of a good quality, like the Ravens have, 2 quality bookend tackles, they're going to put Nate Orchard to sleep. So I'm not expecting much of anything from Nate Orchard this week. But if you put him in front of somebody like, for instance, the Giants, I don't think they have great tackles, especially on the right side. You put Nate Orchard against their right tackle, he could have some success. You know who else could have more success though? You guessed it. All right, you guessed it, Montez Sweat. So this week I don't expect much from Nate Orchard or James Smith-Williams. But, as you go down the line at some of these teams that we'll be playing that don't have elite tackles, that's when a guy like Nate Orchard or James Smith-Williams could potentially come into play. Let's just hope that we're not without Chase Young and we don't have to worry about that for much more than 2 weeks or so. But I digress. Nate Orchard is a guy that I think is solid, but, he's not a needle mover by any stretch of the imagination. Got another super chat. This one is from Rob U. Double up. Thank you for doubling up, Rob U. As always, greatly appreciate you. Rob U. writes, great to see Kendall Fuller back. I second that. I really, really second that statement. And I even said as much on the film breakdown that it was great to see Kendall Fuller back out there, man. He completes that secondary. And because now you have more depth in the secondary when Kendall Fuller's out there. We didn't see a lot of Fab this week. It was primarily because the Ravens don't go a lot of 4 wide, okay? Like some of the teams we've seen earlier in the season that are going to spread you out. They're more of a 21, 22 package personnel offense. So it was a lot of base personnel, and then when we went to nickel, it was Jimmy. So we didn't see a lot of Fab Moreau. They pretty much kept it status quo on the outside. Fuller on one side, Darby on the other, and then when they went to nickel, you saw Jimmy come in the game, and that was the extent of that. So not a lot of Fab Moreau, and I'm a huge fan of Fab Moreau's. I want to see more of him, honestly speaking, but if these guys stay healthy on the outside, and we're not playing a team that's putting 4 wide receivers on the field, we're probably not going to see a lot of Fab Moreau. That's what this early season matchup against Cleveland has told me. If we're staying in our base or we're going to just a nickel package and not a dime look, we're not going to see a lot of Fab right now. So we'll see what happens. But it was definitely great to see Kendall Fuller back. I agree. Got another one here from Kevin, the PRF. Double up. Thank you for doubling up, Kevin, the PRF. My man Kev writes, quick break on current events. Listening to your stream earlier, I wonder what the Shanahans would have done taking Tannehill. Could Kyle have blossomed him earlier into an 8-year starter here? Absolutely, I think they could have. Hindsight is 20/20, obviously. But remember, I told you I had done all my homework on Ryan Tannehill, and I liked what I had seen. He was raw coming out of Texas A&M, but this guy that had been a receiver at one point, converted back to quarterback, he seemed to have the athleticism that the Shanahans covet. And when you look at all of the things that he brought to the table, the ability to throw on the move, he was a big kid that could stand in there and deliver the football. Everything that the Shanahans want with their zone run blocking scheme and the stretch running game, and the bootlegs off of it and the ability to get outside the pocket, throw on the move, have the athleticism to keep some of those naked boots and all of those things. Had they drafted him and developed him, first of all, if they had drafted him instead of Robert Griffin III, the Shanahans don't get fired. The only reason things went sour with the Shanahans here is because of Robert Griffin III. So if there's no Robert Griffin III, the Shanahans don't get fired here, and I think we're set up to have sustained success. That's just me. Now, every coach that's come through here has had issues with Daniel Snyder, except for Jay Gruden, because he was go along to get along Jay. Now, with the Shanahans, maybe they would have run into some issues with Dan down the line that, we aren't privy to now, because all of that is okay. But at the end of the day, I think that if Tannehill is the draft pick instead of Robert Griffin III, this organization would have been better off. But in the moment, none of us could have foreseen that. I would not have taken Tannehill over Robert Griffin III. And I don't think any of you, even though in hindsight now Tannehill's having a much better career, the talent was undeniable with Robert. And if things would have gone a different way, if Robert and his dad would have if Robert's dad would have stayed out of affairs that didn't pertain to him, and Robert would have allowed the Shanahans to do what they were brought here to do, which is coach him and bring him along at the rate of speed that he needed to be brought along at, that whole situation would have gone differently, but it didn't. But I think if Tannehill would have been here and instead of Robert, and the Shanahans would have had a chance to develop Tannehill, I think he would have blossomed into a foundation piece and a starter here in Washington that would have been able to play a decade plus. I really do. But again, Tannehill had his own set of injuries and some own set of issues, but that was in Miami. That wasn't here. So we'll never know. We'll never, ever know what that could have been. But I was prepared for it. Before the trade was made, I was set on Tannehill. I'd done all my homework and research on Tannehill, and I thought he was going to be a Washington Redskin. I was convinced of it. And it turns out that they decided to trade up for Robert, and the rest is history. But what it could have been, what it could have been. Thanks for the super chat, Kev. Rob U. Thank you for tripling up, Rob U. As always, greatly appreciate you. Rob U. Who writes, what happens first? Gibson gets 20 carries in a game or Bryce Love gets his first NFL carry? Oh, that's easy. Gibson gets 20 carries in a game. I don't see Bryce Love blessing an NFL field unless some kind of situation. I'm not going to even say it. I'm not even putting, with all the issues we've had lately, I'm not even putting that I word in the atmosphere. But unless something happens at the running back position, Bryce ain't seeing the field anytime soon. And if they've already said, hey, we're going to go with the hot hand. But the only reason we haven't seen any back on this team get to 20 carries this season, we've had two approach it. In week one, you had Peyton Barber almost get to 20 carries. And in week number 2, you had Antonio Gibson almost get to 20 carries. So he's not that far off. He had 14 carries in week 2, did Antonio Gibson. It's not like he's that far off. If he gets hot, and here's the thing, we haven't had a game in which we've had the lead for most of the game. You saw what happened when we had the lead against Philadelphia. They ran the hell out of Peyton Barber. And it wasn't impressive, but they kept running it. So I'd imagine that if we get a lead early and we jump on somebody and we have a chance to run the football, you're going to see Antonio Gibson and J.D. McKissick have some touches. And I think you can see, and let's just say Antonio Gibson gets hot. We've seen him like he did against Arizona where he got hot in that game and they kept feeding him the rock. You get hot in a game. If he gets hot, I could see him having 22 carries in a game. 22 for 114 yards. But we got to get a lead first. And until we get a lead and we're comfortably ahead and we can run the football without fear of consequences, you're not going to see that. But I don't think Bryce Love is getting anything. I don't even think Bryce Love is going to be active. You got to be active first before you can get a carry. So I'd take the Gibson gets 20 carries option first before Bryce Love gets his first NFL carry. Thank you for that super chat, Rob U. Got another super chat from my man Derek B. Double up. Thank you for doubling up, Derek B. Greatly appreciate you as always. My man Derek B. writes, all hope. Only 17 has done it in the NFL before. You're right. You're absolutely unequivocally right. Only guy that has proven that he is a true NFL commodity on this team is Terry McLaurin. Everyone else, we're trying to find that out about them. But in the small doses that we've seen, I think you have to admit that you've been pretty impressed with what you've seen from some of these guys thus far in this young NFL season. But you're spot on. Terry's the only one that we can say, hey, we know what we're getting from him. We know if we throw 17 the ball, we know what he's going to do with it. What about this guy, and that guy? We don't know. But that's what we're trying to figure out. So you're right. I can't deny that, Derek B. Got another super chat. This one is from Extra Squaw. Thank you for the super chat, Extra Squaw, who writes, what is the breaking point for Haskins? I don't think he is the guy, and I want to draft a young QB in 2021 draft. He hasn't shown me yet. So what is the breaking point for Haskins? I don't know that answer. Ron doesn't even know that answer yet. It's hard to be able to have an answer as to when is when. You know, I can tell you this much. I don't think we're going to get many more of the games that we had on Sunday. That's not really Dwayne's DNA, okay? We've seen Sam Darnold have multiple, 3 and 4 interception games. But that's part of who he was at USC. He took risks. He threw interceptions. You knew that was a part of the Sam Darnold package. That's not what Dwayne Haskins was at Ohio State. That's not really what he was last season. Obviously, those early games, I told you, I throw those out. Those are anomalies to me. The final 7 or 8 starts that he had, Buffalo, Green Bay, Detroit, the Jets, Giants, Eagles, Packers. 7 starts. The final 7 starts of the season that he had, he didn't turn it over a bunch in those games. There weren't 3 interception games in that mix. He might have had a 2 interception game somewhere in there. Maybe. I doubt it. Most of his interceptions came at the beginning of the season when he got to play. I think he ended up finishing up 4 touchdowns, 4 interceptions when the season was all done. Or was it 7 and 7? I can't recall. But he's not a big INT guy. Just know that he threw 3 interceptions versus the Giants. That's where the bulk of his interceptions and mistakes came from last season. So at the end of the day, I look at Dwayne, and I don't think we're going to get many more of these types of games. I'm just looking for incremental improvement. Simple stuff too. I'm not asking for much right now. I'm just looking for simple things. So I don't know what that breaking point is for Ron, but I can tell you if there are more of these performances like we saw in week 3, where the team plays well enough to win, but the one position holding it back is quarterback, happens, that breaking point will come a lot sooner rather than later. I'm not looking for that. You are, obviously. You just said it yourself. You're looking for this team to draft a quarterback in 2021. I don't want to draft a quarterback. I told you, if you want to fast track this team to winning, you need Dwayne Haskins to be good. Because if he's not, and you have to then get a quarterback in the draft, you're going to have to do one of 2 things. You're either going to have to trade up for that guy, or we're going to have to be really bad to be in a position to get that guy. And then after that happens, you got to start this process all over again. New offense. Well, to that quarterback, it's going to be a brand new offense, brand new terminology, brand new players. Everything is brand new. And everything that you're doing, you're starting, it's like you're hitting the reset button on offense. Now, again, if that next guy comes in here and he's elite and he proves it rather early, then it may be all worth it. But right now, I'm going to stick with Dwayne, and I want to see this guy win. I want to see him prove everyone wrong. I'm not jumping off the ship yet. Okay? So, we'll see what the breaking point is for Ron Rivera. But I can tell you, he was not happy about Sunday's performance. We weren't happy. He wasn't happy. And I can tell you the staff wasn't happy. Because after they had a chance to have a powwow, get together, and watch film, his tone totally changed from Sunday after the game to talking to the media on Monday after he had a chance to sit with quarterbacks coach Ken Zampese, offensive coordinator Scott Turner, and watch the film. When they got to sit down and watch the film and they saw some of the things that Dwayne did good, that was encouraging. But then when they saw some of the bad, they said, look, this can't continue. We played well enough to win the football game. So we'll see what happens. Hard to say what the breaking point is going to be. Thank you for the super chat, Extra Squaw. Got another super chat here. This one is from Gearcell1. Uh-oh. How did the O-line play in your opinion? Please tell Landon Collins to stop wearing purple hot pants with corduroy jean jacket. Tragic. What color is the corduroy jean jacket, man? You can start a fire. What you know about that? Corduroy jacket. Wow. I thought the O-line played well. I talked about that in the film breakdown. This was their best game of the season to me, and I don't think it was close, especially from a pass blocking perspective. Dwayne had time in this game. You know, Jaron Christian got beat twice in this game. That was pretty much it. There was a twinge, and I mean the smallest minute of interior pressure in this game. There were a couple of times where Dwayne felt a little bit of heat, or a little bit sooner than he wanted to, and had to make a decision whether it was to roll out of the pocket or to get rid of the football. But for the most part in this game, that offensive line was rock solid. He had a great pocket to climb, to manipulate, to assess his reads. They did a great job in this game protecting Dwayne. And I actually thought they did a quality job in the run game too. There were some really good hits offensively on the ground. We didn't find ourselves, if you look at this game, sans for, a penalty here or there, or Dwayne taking a sack, there weren't many plays in this game that were negative. I can remember Larry Ogunjobi beating Chase Rouillet across his face when Wes Martin didn't get a piece of him, and I broke that down on the film. And that ended up being a tackle for loss. But outside of that, there weren't many tackles for loss in the run game. We were getting some pretty good hits run game-wise. They really established the line of scrimmage. I thought the offensive line looked good in this game. But Landon Collins definitely needs to stop wearing purple hot pants. That's never a good look. And at times, he was playing like he had on purple hot pants in this game. Thank you for the super chat. As always, Gear Cell 1. All right, so we got through all of the super chats. Didn't want to miss any of those. So we'll go back to in other words or in other news, excuse me. And so Dwayne, he took culpability. And that was the thing that I was looking for the most. Is does he understand that he can't play the way that he did on Sunday and expect to continue to be the starting quarterback of the Washington football team? And, he admitted it wasn't good enough. And he also admitted that he stared down, a couple of receivers on some throws in the game. And he also talked about a conversation he had with Ron. And they threw that in his face about what Ron said, all the things that I brought up earlier. And he said, yeah, he talked to Ron, and he understands that he's got to play better. Got to give his team a chance. He talked about not turning the football over. Can't afford to do that. Have to do a better job of taking care of the football. He said he's going to lean on Alex Smith this week, to learn how to bounce back from a rough outing and, things that he can do better to prepare himself. He talked about how, when guys are dropping in zone coverage, their eyes are on you. You can't afford to stare down targets because they're going to make you pay. So he understands. I've never had a problem with Dwayne and his intellect, nor his ability to comprehend what's going on around him, internalize that. And I've never had a problem with Dwayne and his ability to read NFL defenses. I think he understands all of those things. I just think he needs more experience, which he's getting. And I think he has to do a better job of settling down. And this is what I want for Dwayne. I want the game to slow down. I still feel like the game is moving fast for Dwayne. And you hear this all the time. When guys take that next step and you ask them, so we see this big leap from year 2 to year 3. What do you suggest or what do you think is the biggest reason for the change and the uptick in production and how you've been playing? And 90% of the time, 9 times out of 10, the first thing out of that guy's mouth, and it's not cliche, because if you don't get it, your head is spinning. Shit's moving fast, and sometimes it's moving too fast for you. And you hear them say, yeah, the game just slowed down for me. I see things with a level of clarity that I didn't before. Everything was so fast when I first got here, and I was trying to adjust, and it was just hard. But now I see things before they happen. I'm able to go in, and it's like the Matrix. Stuff is moving in slow motion. Everything for Dwayne right now is moving at warp speed. I just want him to settle down and settle down in his mind. I feel like he's a guy that just has a lot going on in his head, and he just needs to settle down and have everything around him slow down. If that can happen, I think there's a chance for him to really start to show the level of improvement that we're looking for from him in 2020. The sooner he's able to do that, the better off he'll be. But I digress. Let's get to our first look this week. And we're going to go ahead, after I put out this defensive film tonight, the second half, and we're going to put the Cleveland game behind us. And we're going to start moving forward. And we do this on Wednesdays. We move on, and we start taking our first look at the upcoming opponent. And we all know who's waiting for us in week 4. You know what I will say? I never thought I would say this. Man, it's so good to be going back home. I know home doesn't really mean much for any team in the league for that matter this year. Some teams have fans, but we won our only game of the season at home this year. I don't know if that means anything or not, but it's just good to be going back home. I don't know about you, but I'm ready for this team to play a game at home. And we'll be playing the next 2 games at home. So that's refreshing. I think we'll be playing the next 2 games at home. I'm not sure if that Rams game is home or away, but I digress. This is a team in Baltimore that they're pissed. There's no other way to say it. They got embarrassed on Monday night. And again, I even credit them for even making that a ball game, because at 27-10, I thought that game was over. And I thought they were left for dead, and the Chiefs looked like they were going to put up 40-some-odd points. I thought they were going to put a 40-burger on the Ravens. And the Ravens somehow weathered the storm and got it to within 1 score at 27-20. And I don't even know. I still don't know how the hell they got that done. I really don't. But they were thoroughly dominated in that game. They were made to look silly and foolish by Patrick Mahomes. And they're going to want to take their frustration and anger out on someone. And that someone, it's going to be us. And it's not going to be pretty. And how are they going to do that? We're really going to get into the meat and potatoes of that tomorrow. But I can tell you this much. I don't think we're going to have any answers for their offense. We can talk about their, our defense versus their offense. I don't think we're going to have any answers. And if we go into a game this season thinking that our defense is overmatched, we're in trouble, because that's the strength of our team right now. If we don't have the defense to hang our hat on going into a game, we're in trouble this season. And I don't think we can hang our hat on the defensive side of the football in this game. I think they present so many mismatches, so much speed offensively. The way they run the football, I don't think we're ready to defend against, especially without Chase Young and Matt Ioannidis. On third downs, where we need to get after Lamar Jackson, are we going to keep contained? Or are we going to let him outside of the pocket? We have not done a good job this season of containing guys. We didn't contain Kyler Murray. Or I shouldn't say guys, because I feel like we did a good enough job of containing Carson Wentz, and Baker Mayfield isn't much of a scrambler. So we didn't have to worry about him. But we didn't contain Kyler Murray well at all. And so I'm not confident that we're going to do anything remotely close to containing Lamar Jackson. Their tight end is as good as it gets in terms of catching the football in the league, and Mark Andrews. I'm scared for what he could potentially do to our defense. We don't defend tight ends well. We still don't. We have an issue there. So I'm not looking forward to this. They got speed on offense. They can run the football. They got a mobile quarterback. They got a tight end that can make plays. All of those things are kryptonite for our defense. So, and I also don't think we play read option very well. We saw what Kyler Murray did to us in read option situations. I don't think we respond well to any of that stuff. I think it's going to be a long afternoon defensively. And if it's a long afternoon defensively, that means it's a long day for the Washington football team. Because then you're relying on the offense. Bad move. That's bad news. But we'll get into the particulars of everything tomorrow as we go behind enemy lines and really deep dive into this matchup and talk about what it will take for Washington to get a victory in week number 4 over the Baltimore Ravens, or at minimum, stay competitive for at least 3, possibly 3.5 quarters. So we'll get knee deep into that tomorrow, but at the end of the day, that's a good football team over there. And they're going to look to get back on track and get back to their winning ways. And I don't think we're in any position, especially with some of these injuries, to stop them from doing that. So that's going to do it for me. Your man, Louie T. I thank you guys for joining me on the program tonight. As always, I enjoy chopping it up with you guys. Look forward to finishing up the defensive film and getting that up to Patreon. If you're not a patron, what are you waiting on? Become a Patreon member so you don't miss out on these film breakdowns. There's a lot of great info that I'm giving out on these film breakdowns. Also sharing other opinions that I don't share on these shows with you guys, giving you a little bit of insight as to the way I see the game, how I react during the game when I'm watching it live, and what I was thinking when these things transpired. So if you're not on Patreon, you need to get on Patreon so you don't miss out on this great content. So with that being said, you guys go ahead and get back to the NBA Finals. I hate the fact that I even stopped you from watching the NBA Finals or your MLB postseason, whatever you're partaking in. Go ahead and get back to that. I thank you guys for joining me tonight, and I really appreciate you. Make sure you subscribe to this channel if you haven't already done so. Make sure you turn on your notification bell so you don't miss a thing. And also make sure you hit the like button on the way out. I really do appreciate you guys. Thank you so much for all that you do for the Louie T Network. And I look forward to chopping it up with you guys again tomorrow. Don't forget, Louie T Network podcast will be up on Friday. We'll be live at noon. We'll be giving out the picks for the week. Also, Thursday night football overtime. Look, I'm not looking forward to it. And I don't think many of you are either. And if you don't watch, I totally get it. But I'll be live after the game of Broncos and Jets. Yeah. Anyway, you guys enjoy the rest of your night. I'll see you guys next time. Have a good one.
Here comes the diesel. Here comes the diesel. There's the snap. Hand to Riggins. Good hole. He's got the first down to the 40. He's gone. The 35.